But somehow my
Wow.
dad wanted to end that cycle of illiteracy. And since there's
Okay.
no school anywhere close to my village,
Yeah.
apparently he's the family somewhere in Kaduna. This particular, he spoke to the family and pleaded with if they can take me in as a houseboy, and in return, if they can pay my school fees. I was just 6 years old around
Well,
that. My dad
6 years
handed
old.
me over. I mean, there are moments where as things as I made mistake or I forgot to do something. I remember a couple times that she would pick my food and dish it to the dogs, you know.
My God.
And so one day they sent me to the market with enough money, and I just thought that maybe I should just run away to the other part of the city, in
Okay.
Kaduna. I ran away because I couldn't take
Mm.
the abuse anymore. And then I ended up being a street kid. And I think one of the things that I look forward to was actually dying because
My
I
God.
had no hope. Food is just, I guess, the most challenging part
Challenging
of it.
for you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I think how I overcame that, it was connected to the people that came and rescued me. It's been about 10 years now that I left the shore of Nigeria, and with just euros, $2, I'm on my way to 50 countries, or am I even on 60
Wow.
now?
Hi, Ezekiel. Good evening. Welcome to Living Beyond
Evening.
Limitations. Yeah. It's a delight having you here. I listened to your story on a podcast. And I was like, wow, amazing. This is a story of transformation. And I'm like, my audience need to hear this story as well. Like a whole lot of young people, they need to hear your story because I was so inspired by your story. So it's really an honor having you here.
Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be invited to share my story. And thank you for the incredible work that you've continued to inspire a whole lot of people. And I feel honored to also be invited to share my own portion of the story. And hopefully that someone will be encouraged and also be inspired. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, so from slavery to a street kid and to the nations, over 40 countries. So amazing. So, can you take us back to your earliest moments before going into slavery?
My story is it's a, I guess the dynamic is interesting. I was
Very.
born in Katsina State, to in kind of a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere.
Wow.
And as a little boy, story today, I laugh about it. But I honestly thought that we only ones existing. So I didn't even know the nation existed as a whole,
Wow.
because there's just nothing around me, no school, road, electricity, running water, and all of that type of stuff.
Oh
Or
my
I
God.
think if I remember correctly, the first time I saw a car, it's when I was, I think, 5, 6 years old, just to help create a mental picture.
Picture.
And we were so poor that even the poor people call us poor. So my dad had never been to school, neither my mom or my grandparents or great grandparent, as far back as we can count. And so it wasn't just poverty, illiteracy, and all of that dynamic. But somehow my
Wow.
dad wanted to end that cycle of illiteracy. And since there's
Okay.
no school anywhere close to my village, So, of course, he knew that the city existed since an adult.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's the family somewhere in Kaduna. I'm just trying to
Okay.
hold the names.
Yeah.
And in this particular, he spoke to the family and pleaded with if they can take me in as a houseboy or house help to do all the
Wow.
domestic housework, and in return, if they can pay my school fees. That was just the bargain that my dad, or the deal that he negotiated. So one night he came to me and told me that, hey, tomorrow I'm taking you somewhere. Anyway, when my dad came to me and told me that, I was terrified. That's, as I often share the story, I usually say, probably
Mm.
that was the first time I prayed in my life, if that counts as a prayer for the day not to break, because I didn't want to leave. You know what I mean? But of course, the day break. And we drove to the nearest road to us, and that was the first time I saw the road also, and
Wow.
saw multiple cars kind of back and forth. I was to this location, and my dad handed me over to the family. I was just 6 years old, around
Wow.
that. My dad
6 years
handed
old.
me over and went back to the village with the hope and the joy that his son is in school.
Mm.
And but that was the beginning of my nightmare.
You were just 6 years old. Like, I can't even imagine. I really can't comprehend. So, would you like to share your experience with us going into slavery at such an early age, at age 6? And did you understand why your parents had to do that?
Unfortunately, the family didn't keep up to their promise. I did
Oh,
all the domestic housework, ranging from cleaning, sweeping, dishes, fetching
wow.
water, and like all of it that you can imagine. Um, since I'm speaking to a lot more Nigerian audience, then I don't have to even give more details. So when I speak about house help, domestic work, I think
Yeah, they would
everybody kind of
understand.
knows what I'm talking about. So I spent about 3 to 4 years in this house, and I couldn't take the abuse, both physically, mentally, and psychologically. And
Mm.
I grew a little older. One day, they sent me to the market. So they usually send me to the market for, food stuff, shopping, and I also didn't know how to read and write, so I had to learn to memorize. So I became
Wow.
really good at memorizing. Because that was, if you make a list for me, you're just wasting your time because I'll not be able to read. And so there's the auntie would just say what she want me to buy, the price, how many pieces, and make a whole list. And she'll say maybe two, three times, and I'll memorize it. I'll go to the market, get the thing back to her exactly as she wanted it. When I look forward to when they even send me to the market to go buy like food stuff, because then at least I'm away. So any potential risk of being flogged is temporarily suspended because I won't be in the home. Because again, I am a child. So first and foremost is that when you send a child to do something or you give him a task to do, I can easily get carried away by other things,
Yes,
playing with the
exactly.
kids. So,
Yeah.
those kind of mistakes where I feel grace was not expressed. I felt like they wanted me to be an adult when I was still a child. I mean, there are moments where, as things as I made mistake or I forgot to do something. I remember a couple times that she would pick my food and dish it to the dogs, you know?
My God.
And so one day they sent me to the market with enough money, and I just thought that maybe I should just run away to the other part of the city, in
Okay.
Kaduna. I ran away because I couldn't take
Mm.
the abuse anymore. And then I ended up being a street kid for about 2 years. I didn't understand my dad's intention. Again, I was too young to even comprehend what
Comprehend.
that
Yeah.
meant. And that's why I had a lot of identity crisis because for
Mm.
me, yeah, because how I translated the situation or interpreted it, uh, I felt abandoned and I felt rejected by my parents. So later on, as an adult, of course, I went through therapy to process, heal, and all of that. From a psychological, those who are into psychology or therapy, they would say that's when I had my early childhood trauma because my
Yeah.
emotion kind of just shut down because I felt abandoned, rejected, and nobody cares. And the reason why I'm also saying that because every day I remember when someone knocked at the gate where I was staying now, I would run towards it with the hope that
Mm.
someone had come to rescue me, you know?
Wow.
And
Mm.
that was just my hope every day. And days became weeks, months, and
Wow.
started becoming 1 year, 2 years. And so from there, I was just numb. And I think one of the things that I look forward to was actually dying because
My
I
God.
had no hope.
So, what was the street like? What was it like for you living in the street?
When you're on the street, you are surrounded by people who share your pain because street kids have similar stories, even though there's
Hmm.
a different angle to the story. Some maybe they are orphans, some maybe the parent can take care of them. You know,
Wow.
the different the different reality, but in the end, you're all on the street for the same, the end result was kind of similar. And so you're surrounded by people that are broken. You're broken, they're broken. So it's just a fellowship of brokenness, yeah, in a way, And so you either pry on each other pain or
Hmm.
you pry on each other, I don't know, sadness, and you're looking for food to eat. It's about survival. Now you're vulnerable and exposed to all kinds of danger, ranging from
Danger, yeah.
drug, criminal
Wow.
elements of
Oh my
that.
God.
So all this kind of thing, you're there on the street. You want to still to survive, you know what I mean, and do all kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So that was my reality on the street for
on the
about
streets.
a year and a half to 2 years somewhere in Kaduna. The thing is that when I was on the streets, it's like my brain was not functioning well
Wow.
to a certain extent, I would say, because one, I guess I was malnourished. So my brain was just more on autopilot in a way. When I wake up in the morning, all I think, okay, so we're referred to as NFA, no future ambitions. That's what people kind of call us on the street. And so I don't know how to even think, like to imagine or to dream things through imagination. I think I learned that when I was like 16 years.
Wow.
And one day in that on the street actually was, as I said, I was like a walking dead. I was looking forward to dying. So anything that could kill me, you'll find me there. You know what I
Wow.
mean? So, like involved on a street fight with people I know that could easily slit my throat and all of that.
Oh,
Looking forward to dying. It's like I was
hmm.
so kind of suicidal because, as I say, hope died. There was nothing
Yeah, the
to
hope died.
look forward. I was not crying. I couldn't even cry. So that's why sometimes when I speak, I said, I don't know how scientifically true that sounds, but to me, I said, when I see somebody, as long as regardless of the situation where they are, as long as they can cry, then they still hope. Because to a certain extent, the expression of tears, it communicates language that cannot be spoken, that cannot be said in words.
Yeah.
But when somebody get to that state where they can't even cry anymore because there's no tears to be shed, then it's almost the utter state of hopelessness. And with that, when you reach that point, I feel like suicide or the desire to die become the only thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you being suicidal, did you try any means, like, or you were just looking
I,
for any
no,
random thing?
no. I did. I tried the random things, and I also actively try
Okay.
suicide. I tried enough time that I can't even keep record of how many times I did. Of course, now I can say God was protecting me, and His grace and all of that. But at the time, I just thought that I'm not even gonna die. I tried to die. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna kill myself slowly. Since I've tried
Wow.
the active suicide and it failed. So when I was on the street, I would just inhale. I didn't like smoking, drugs, and all of that. Again, when I look back, I feel like this is how God protects me also. And so since I didn't like those things, I need to find something else that can make me forget my pain or get away, just be absent from reality. So I started, and then at the same time, I also need something that could also kill me. So I will take petrol and I'll try to sniff it and I will inhale
My
it as hard as I can because that goes straight into your brain and just knock you out for like just few seconds. And then I keep repeating that. I repeat that over and over, and then I got used to that. So I will have to add condemned engine oil with petrol. Then
wow.
I got used to that. I miss kerosene, diesel, so
Oh,
whatever
same
chemical that I
here.
could use.
Kerosene.
I'll just mix them up, sniff,
Yeah.
inhale. and all of that,
Wow.
passed out. And, because of course I watch people on the street that just get mad, mental deranged really quickly because these are chemicals that go straight into your brain cells
Your
and it
brain. Yeah.
damages your brain. So I thought, maybe if I damage my brain, I can die easily. So, but
Oh my God.
somehow everything just remained intact. My eyes are not, they used to be very clear white, kind of, and the dark spot in the middle, the retina. But now they're like mixed because one time I was doing that and I was shaking the petrol mixed with other oil, and then the lid just popped open and it just went straight into my face, my
Wow.
ears, eyes, and every. It actually knocked me off. It was this woman, Ekwa Zumuntamata. I think they're coming back from church or fellowship. They saw me from a distance. Those were the ones that rescued me.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's also how I tried to kill myself actively, besides even the suicide
Hmm.
attempt that I failed. And
I understand what you're saying because I've been there before. I lost my sight. I couldn't bear
you
it.
know,
Like, so I can totally relate. When I thought like dying was the only option, like I was looking forward to dying. I tried like a lot of things.
yeah.
Yeah. So you said you were hopeless. I'm going to ask you a question about how you found hope. But before that, I just want you to tell us, like, what was the most challenging thing for you as a street kid, and how were you able to overcome that?
All I ever cared about was just food, where I'm gonna get the next meal. You know what I mean? That's just so I guess in a way that has been the most way to sleep. I don't even care actually. Whatever the night caught up with me, then that's where you pass it. But food was just more like, eating food from the trash, or sometimes you go
Oh my
to
God.
the place, like massa joint, and then when people eat and have some leftovers before they pick it up, just grab some and run away. So that's kind of I survive.
Hmm.
Eggshells, some people peel off the eggs and throw it off, and so you kind of pick
Wow.
it, just munch it and all of that. So it was just about survival. First and foremost, the priority is just food. Food is just, I guess, the most challenging part
Challenging
of it.
for you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and I think how I overcame that, it was connected to the people that came and rescued me because it wasn't
Oh.
something actively. So, oh, today I'm gonna overcome this challenge. I didn't even know the way out, if I'm
Hmm.
honest. But when this group of YWAM people were going on a weekly evangelism came to me on the street, one of them, so he said to me that Jesus loves you. That's what he said. And my immediate response to him, I said, does your Jesus have food? You know?
Wow.
So because I was hungry, so he looked at me and
Yeah.
he said, well, if you walk back to me to where I'm coming from, I can give you my lunch. We went back to the Bible school and he gave me food. I ate, and that was the Jesus I needed. And then when I was about leaving, he said, look, if you're hungry, you can come back later for food. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna be here for sure because that's the only problem in my life. I only have one problem,
Problem food.
one dream, and one aspirations at a time was food and food and food alone. So when he offered to solve that, I felt like my problem was solved. He gave
So
me food,
yeah.
and then one day he asked me like, "Hey, would you like to come and stay with us?" And so I'm like, "Wow!" So I'm gonna sleep on the mattress, have a room to sleep. I mean, I couldn't ask for more. So it felt like a seven-star experience. Where to sleep and food to eat. That was the only dream
Yeah.
I ever had at the time. And they quickly solved that. But to proceed was because they Bible school, and I didn't know that. So they were like, okay, we can't keep him here because since he's not a student, he can't join the training because he needs to be at least 18 years old. And so they say, okay, we're gonna call our location, one of our centers in Jos. They have a primary school, kindergarten, and all of that. So since I didn't know how to read and write, they're gonna send me to Jos to attend this school now, and I will be fed also. Very
Oh wow.
important.
Solve your
Yeah.
problem.
So
That solves your
I wasn't,
problem
I
a
wasn't,
lot.
I wasn't necessarily interested about the school. As long
Hmm.
as food was involved, I'll be there. So they sent me to Jos. Then I went to Jos. They sent me to the school for the first 2 weeks, and I lasted only 2 weeks because they decided that they cannot keep me longer in the school because I lack the social skills to relate to other kids in a healthy way. Because I was coming from the street, so I don't know how to
Yeah.
relate in a very healthy, normal way with other kids. And so the base decided that, okay, this kid needs discipleship, so we're going to make the exception for him to do the discipleship training program at this young age. So it was now I was sent on to a Bible school as a teenager, you know. So I'm hearing, and I was not, mind you, I was not a Christian. Every morning, listen to teaching about the Bible, like proper Bible school,
Yeah.
as if I was going to be a pastor or something, or Bible teacher. And for me, I'm like, as long as they would give me food during lunch. So I thought my negotiation was I attend their classes, then I get food. Not that they
Oh,
told me
went to sleep.
verbally. No, I just thought that was my assumption. I was like, they're feeding me shelter. The least I can do is just to sit in their class. I don't need to believe in what they're saying. So that's what I
Hmm.
did. And every
Wow.
week, the different speaker coming to talk about God, and they always had a prophecy for my life. And so this is part of the hope now to answer. It's connected. That's why I cannot single it out for you.
Out.
And
Okay.
during this week, during this teaching time, there always a prophecy, every speaker that come, something like, okay, the Lord is going to send you to the nations. You're going to travel the world to talk about
Were
hope.
they speaking directly to you,
They were
prophesying on
talking to
your life?
me. Yeah, they were
Okay.
talking, yeah, prophesying over my life that
Okay.
that the Lord is going to send me to the nations. I'm going to travel the
Hmm.
world. I will speak about
Wow.
hope, hope, forgiveness, restoration, healing,
Hmm.
identity. It was a whole list of prophecy every
Hmm.
week. And of course, I didn't believe anything because for me, it was like, my dad, I come from the poorest of the poor, you
Hmm.
know. We were so poor that my dad couldn't even afford the cheapest school available. So here you are conveniently prophesying that I'm
What?
going to travel
Like going
the
to
world,
nations.
not even travel within Nigeria. You know what I mean? I'm going to travel the world. So at
Into
least you can understand
nations.
why I
Man.
didn't believe that prophecy. So we finished the school, still not a Christian. We went on mission trip, still not a Christian. We did
Really?
outreach. Yeah, I
You didn't.
was. I only when we go to evangelize and when I had to speak, then I memorize. I hear how people talk about Jesus, so I just repeat the same thing.
It's the
And,
same thing. That's funny.
and then people will give their like I've seen people give their life to Jesus when I
Yeah.
finish sharing about Jesus, but I don't believe the Jesus that I just finished sharing. Anyway, I don't want to go into preaching that route, but
Yeah.
but that's a whole different experience. And so after the school, I came back. A year and a half later, there's still void and emptiness in my heart. And so I sat myself down one day, I was thinking to commit suicide. Because I realized that, okay, yes, I needed food and I needed shelter. That I thought that was what I needed, but that has been met. But the existential problem inside, the trauma, the pain,
Yeah.
that has not been dealt with, that has not
Dealt
been
with.
processed. So the emptiness and the void kind of surface
Hmm.
again. And the only response I have to that whenever it pops up was suicide. That was my always response.
Wow. So at that point,
And
you were still suicidal,
yeah,
thinking
well,
of,
yeah, this
wow.
particular day I was thinking of killing myself. So but then I thought, and somehow I just keep hearing the words, the prophecy that has been
Hmm.
prophesied over. And I'm like, okay, God is gonna send it to the nation. So for once I thought that maybe truly the Lord will want to use me. I want to send me to the nations. Maybe I
Hmm.
need to open up my heart to give him a chance. So I thought, as classic easy, I thought, you know what, I will give Jesus 2 weeks. If he doesn't reveal himself to me in a way that I know it's him, then I will commit suicide.
Wow.
So that was just my conclusion. And so what I decided to do, I well, Jesus didn't take 2 weeks anyway.
Oh, wow.
He only took just a couple of days.
Days.
And so the long story, I don't want to dig into detail about that part, but I just had a dream of Jesus in that dream. And we spoke, and I hear the same message that I've been hearing in the form of prophecy. And so towards the end of the dream, he looks at me and he repeated the same thing. But at the end, he said, if you're willing and available for me, that was what he said.
Mm. Wow.
And I've loved you. I've always loved you. I continue to love you. Want to use you. Want to send you to the nation to talk about hope, restoration,
Mm.
forgiveness, identity. He repeated the same thing. But the difference was that, as I say, he said, "Boy, if you're willing and available for me." So,
Available.
so when I woke up, that was the first time. It was as if like a spirit has left me,
Mm.
literally. And literally, like I'm not joking about this, man. Like when I woke up that morning, and I was
Wow.
thinking, I began to even question myself, why was I thinking of killing myself?
Oh,
You know what?
wow.
So at least for me, that was the experience. There was like a flip. Why was
Hmm.
I want to kill myself?
That's all.
So it was as if I found hope and purpose, something that I can live for, and even
Hmm.
later. And so that's kind of how I get my life to Christ. And then I went back to school, and I had an incredible teacher who believed in me more than I even believe in myself. So I usually say she believed in me before I even believed in
Believe
myself,
in yourself. Wow.
and that was part of my healing and where I began to embrace hope in a way.
Hmm.
And because she really poured in so much every day after school hours, she would spend about 4 or 5 hours extra just to make
Wow.
sure that I was learning. And she did that for like 2 years. And so that's how I learned to read. I learned to read and write when I was 15 years old. That was the first time I could
Wow.
read anything or spell my name properly. And then the Lord began to restore even that years wasted. So instead of 6 years of primary school, I spent only actually about 3 years, not even up to 3 years. And then I
Yeah.
went to secondary school. Instead of the 6 years, I spent about 4 years. So that's actually 12 years of school was concise in about six. So in a terms of practical sense of restoration, that was part of the experience. And then
Hmm.
healing began to come in, restoration, because I had to work with the existential question about my identity. I didn't
Yeah.
like myself. I hated myself. I thought that
Exactly.
was a problem. I thought I was a mistake. My parents never liked me. That's why they abandoned me, rejected me. So
Hmm.
all of the lies, I had to deal with it and begin to embrace the truth that has been spoken over me. And so when I finally got to that point, and that's when I embraced, in a way, my purpose, and then this calling of just going to the nation to really speak and work with other people who are in that place where I was to be able to embrace purpose. So that's kind of what I began to do. And then over 10 years ago, I moved to Europe, Germany precisely, which is a whole different story how that happened. Because one
Happen.
day my high school, there was no money to go to university. And so I thought, well, there's a prophecy that I'm going to go to the nation. So when I sold my Android phone at the time, then I made an international passport because I thought, well, if I need to go to the nation, the first thing that I
You
need is
need
international
an
passport.
international passport. Yeah.
I sold my phone and I made a passport. So for 2 years, I didn't even have a phone, but I had an international passport. So every day when I look at the passport, I just tell myself that I'm on transit. So I'm on my way to the nation because I needed to also fight the disbelief that I was dealing with. And I needed to constantly remind myself that my purpose, what I'm capable of doing, and all of that, and then the door opened miraculously. Then I went to Germany. I know I was gonna go to Germany, so it was a whole journey of faith, and the whole process was just really faith. That's the summary of it, because I didn't have any penny. I left Nigeria with only €5, $2. I never forget, and that's what I arrived Germany with this amount of money to a nation I've never been, language I've never spoken, don't even understand at all. And I arrived in a new place, and I said, well, the Lord has spoken. I'm going to go to the nation. So this is the first one. and I began to get the training that I needed to work with people. And then the Lord just opened that portal. It's been about 10 years now that I left the shore of Nigeria, and with
Um,
just euros, $2, and I have been to, now this is the part that I'm sharing the story again. I always say not to tell people how many countries I've been, but just to see the restoration and what the Lord did,
yes,
and also
what God can
journey
do.
of
Yeah.
faith. So when I left Germany with this amount of money, it's about 10 years later now, I'm on my way to 50 countries, or am I even on 60
Wow.
now, around the
Wow.
world, in every
Wow.
continent with the exception of Antarctica, you know,
Wow.
and,
Wow.
and I'm just doing the same thing. The prophecy to talk with young people, identity, purpose, and all of that. So
Yeah.
that's actually I'm living that prophecy the last 10 years. And I have no
Wow.
home in a way. In the last 5 years, I don't think I've stayed in a country longer than 3 weeks. So,
Wow.
because it's like back to back, just going
Mm.
to the nations around the world to just talk about hope, identity, forgiveness. So yeah, and I feel so privileged, and this can only be God, to be honest,
Yes,
without
exactly.
mixing any words. As I share the story often, even in a non-Christian cycle, I always say to them, whether you're religious or not, this could only be God. And
God.
sharing my story without God is removing the most important part of that story. And because I
Exactly.
know it's not the doing of any man or my parent or anyone, but along the way, God has brought people who have
Mm.
impacted my life. And these are also people that I'm
Wow.
so grateful to for allowing the Lord to use them. It was a people or a family that abused me, but the Lord has also brought families
Praise for the
who
people.
have
Yeah.
brought
Yeah.
restoration, and people
Wow.
who opened their homes, not just their hearts, but they also opened their homes for me where I know I can go in any time, not
Mm.
just in Nigeria. I can think of almost 100 countries around the world that I have places that I can sleep. And
Amazing. Yeah.
is I also finished, so I finished my bachelor 2 years ago in Hawaii in the US, and
Wow.
also I travel around the world to do that. And then last year I also finished my master's in cross-cultural communication and strategic leadership. And that was in Brazil as well.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
this is so incredible. As I said, I feel like I'm living a dream in a way most of the time because I've taken a couple of my friends to my village where I was born, and
Mm.
sometimes they will look at me and like, wow, they cannot believe that this is
Believe.
where
Yeah, I can
I am.
imagine.
For my friends who have been to my village, like one of my friends will always tease me. He say, "You that used to kuda kuna hawan jaki yanzu kana hawan jirgi." You know that
Was
maybe
that?
for the sake of your audience that don't understand Hausa. He said this man that was used to riding on a donkey, now he's flying.
Flying. Yeah.
One of
That's
my friend
amazing.
always tease me with that. So that's really the story. And I rather we've been coming to Nigeria also to pour out in communities through the project that we're doing now, like in the area of water and environment, so that it gives other young kids the opportunity to walk to school instead of working to collect contaminated water. And so along the teaching and all of that around the world, but we're also doing an practical projects in Africa, primarily Nigeria right now, in the area of water that we started like 5 years ago. So because the restoration of our story always has a ripple effect, that our healing is connected to other people healing. The more we heal, the more other people can
People
heal because then
here.
we get to live in
Yes.
our calling and what we're meant to be. So that's
Yeah.
like a kind of concise version of the story. And I didn't find hope. I say hope found me. You know,
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. I
yeah.
can relate. So that was like your turning point. You found
Hmm.
hope from when those people came to meet you and the whole nations you had to believe. you met Christ, you accepted Christ as your Lord
Yeah.
and personal Savior and all that. And here you are today coming back to do projects and all. Like this is so, so amazing. Sometimes we try to end our life because we really don't know God's plan and purpose for us. We don't get to see the brighter picture ahead of us. So we try everything to take our
Yeah.
life, thinking we are worthless. We tie our identity to our situation. But when
Yeah.
we get to understand that our identity is in God, we're not defined by our circumstance and all. There is
Preach.
a plan and purpose for our life, then we'll find hope. Hope will find us, and we just keep into the calling that God has designed for us. I can totally relate to your story, being suicidal and not finding hope, but hope found you.
Yeah.
So going to different nations, like this story just got me there. Like, oh my God, I can't imagine that person now going to different nations and now spreading the message of hope, forgiveness, and identity and all. So, what has been most challenging for you doing this missionary work?
I can tell you countless of stories when it comes to that. But to begin with, one of the biggest challenge that I also have to fight that from the mind, especially again the power of belief, whereas in the area of provision, finances, and all of that, you know. And so just to be able to break that barrier and just really trust God to see provision to go to the nations was, of course, and especially during going into mission where you're not working and earning money, and then you're in a
Yeah,
foreign country where you need a lot of money. So that it itself was a challenge, and that's why I kind of just brush the story without even giving detail. When I say I love this country with €5, $2, and it's been 10 years later and 50 plus nations and still counting. So that's
wow,
already in itself like overcoming barriers and obstacles of financial limitation just to be able to see
invitation.
God
Yeah.
open, and also using the Nigerian green passport to travel the world. I travel on my green passport because I feel the Lord wanted me to keep my passport and use it because he said, I'm going to open doors for you. So just trusting
Wow,
and following him at every stage of that when you're dealing with a temptation at every turn, you can flip. So that has been challenging, but that has also been rewarding.
that's amazing. How do people look at you with your missionary work on cornrows? Nigeria, we look at, how can this person say he's a
That has
Christian?
been that has been a very interesting response, but I try to sometimes I lose it. And sometimes I had it, and then I just wear suits, look very official and corporate, so it kind of distract them a little bit. And I still get the judgment in general, but especially when I go on stage to preach. So they're looking, but usually after the sermon or the teaching, and people are like, "My goodness." So I'm used to it. But and I try when I'm in the northern part, I take it off, and then when I'm in the other part, I put it back. So it's just a dynamic. I try to honor culture that can be considered disrespectful, and then in a place where it's just like you're testing the water a little bit, then I do it like that. But it has
Okay.
also created a lot of conversation for me because sometimes people are like, what you're teaching and what you look is unbelievable, and
Different,
that's
yeah. We like to
uh,
judge people by the
yeah,
outward
yeah.
appearance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're here to break barriers. It's not about the looks of the person, it's
Yes.
about the character and the inside, the transformation.
Insight,
Somebody,
exactly. Okay, so let's talk
yeah.
about reconnection. How did you reconnect with your parents and how were you able to forgive them? Did you ever meet them before traveling, or it was after a while you came back to Nigeria before you reconnected with them?
When I started to see therapists, because I need to process my wounds, there was one point where I returned from Italy from administration or teaching week. It was one of the most remarkable experience I had in terms of my teachings ministry. But somehow I felt it could have gone deeper than the way it went. And that's when I felt the Lord just spoke to me. He was like, "Hey, Easy, can you allow me to lay my fingers on your emotion?" You know? And so somehow I felt it's either I allow him to open the lids. So, I really face the pain, the anger, whatever it is, or I just zip up, then I have to deal for the rest of my life with a certain element of emotion that I'm not able to feel or express. So, but then I thought that, okay, I mean, I trust God with my life. Let me just open that up. So then I started going through the healing. And so I did three things because I said, I want to see a seek professional counselor so that I want to know the depth of the damage, the trauma might have caused me, so I know exactly what I'm dealing with. So it can also help me to understand how better I can pray in terms of restoration. And these were the things that I did. And I also seen a Christian therapist and a specialist on early childhood trauma and adult trauma and all of that. So it was during this time that I began to process that, okay, I need to really forgive and release my parents. But before I do that, let me also talk to them to hear why they did what they did. Because up until then, I only share the story from my perspective. So I picked up the phone, called my mom and dad, just thought I was explaining how I feel, what happened, because most of my story they don't even know. But I just wanted to hear from their perspective. So and then I explained to them because when you did this, it did this to me, it did this to me, and I was this, and this. But I'm going through a healing process. I just wanted to say that. So my dad said that why they did that, he felt that he couldn't even explain it in a word, but now I know. He said he just felt that there's something that there's a role that education was going to play connected to my destiny. So he thought that their sacrifice to make was to give me out the way they did with the hope that this family will educate me so that their poverty does not rob me the opportunity to pursue whatever he said he felt, which I didn't even realize he really understood the depth of what he was talking about. So that's what I said. Like, so also just understanding their heart that they did it. The intention was good, and how it was executed was maybe not the best way. So it helped me to release them and also to forgive them because I grew up without them in my life. So they're like blood strangers to me. And so that bring reconnection. And so that's how we reunited. And then one of the first project we did was back in the village. We do their water, we solve the water crisis with additional two or three other villages. And so we were stranded during that project. Instead of 3.5 weeks, it took about 4 months because of the insecurity. We had to travel back and forth to Casino, driving 14 hours every other day just to be there for like 4 hours. So somehow that helped me also just to be with them or to connect during that
Okay.
project. And it brought a lot of healing. So we're still in contact. I wouldn't say we have the best of the best relationship,
Relationship. Wow.
but at least I don't have any grudge towards them. I am involved in their life and also helping my younger ones. And so yeah, I'm good and I found healing in that
Yes.
sense. But of course, the fact that I didn't grow up with them is still a void in my space that God is still restoring and healing, but it's not something that is withholding me and I'm not holding any grudges against them. I think they did the best they could
You
based on
could, yeah.
the available knowledge they had, you know. So I can't blame them, which is why we're trying to work hard in that community to bring developments. So that's how we're trying to do all of the humanitarian work we're doing in that community and many more other community as the Lord provide funds. So yeah, that was the
Yeah. Oh wow. I can imagine reconnecting, having to forgive them. But yeah, like you said, that was the best that they could do. But then looking at it, for me, I would say if they hadn't done that, you wouldn't have been here. So
yeah, no, that's
it's
what I
still
say. So
it's
yeah.
still yeah, it's still like God's plan for you to take you
Mhm.
to where He has destined for you.
Exactly. So that's part of the restoration. Even
Yeah.
though the intention was good, but along the line, the enemy twists something, but the Lord has still
Yes.
restored it, and it has become part of what fertilized me to be who I am today. And it's part of
Today.
my healing and
Mm.
restoration. What is supposed to be a pain or a wound to hold me ransom has become
Yeah.
a scar of healing and a
Mm.
testimony in that.
Exactly. So, what would you say that one lesson from your whole experience? What would you say that is?
I think now I can say confidently two things. One is
Okay.
simply as our circumstances or the environment or the situation where we are currently should not define our reality or the dream and the
Yeah.
desires that God has for us. That's one. Regardless of how things may seem impossible. That's one. So to break from that limitation and to keep striving for the best. That's the one aspect I would say. And then secondly, the Lord always come through. You know, as
Yeah.
as cliche as that may sound, so I would say, regardless, don't be discouraged. If
Mm.
somebody like me who doesn't even know the world existed, Nigeria existed, and God is able to pick me from that place and to be sharing such story now, then there's still hope for whoever
Yeah.
that is listening to me that feels homeless. Everything about my life seemed to have started late according to human
Mhm.
calendar. But I
Yeah.
believe in God's calendar, it was the perfect time.
Yeah.
Thank you so
When
much for
does
having.
that
Thank you so much for having me, and also to the listener. Thank you also for the time to listen to the story, and I hope you're inspired. But more importantly, don't lose hope.
thank you so much for being here once again.